Welcome to our Women's Wednesdays Entrepreneur Education Series. I'm Brandy Stitt, the Program Director for the Women's Business Center in Kansas City. Today, our topic will be focused on Instagram and Twitter 201 for business. This is the final installment of our four-part social media series with Christina and Aviva. If you've missed any of our previous sessions, we did record all of those sessions and have posted those on the Women's Business Center's YouTube channel. So certainly feel free to check it out. If you missed a session and want to revisit it, feel free to head there. We are recording this session and we'll post it on our YouTube channel as well. So certainly if this is helpful information that you want to share with others, feel free to share that information, and then also it'll be available for you to revisit at any time as well. It does take us a couple days to edit and post, so you might want to check early next week to see if we have that posted on our YouTube channel. So at this time, I am going to go ahead and introduce our presenters. Today we are joined again by Aviva Ajmera with Solve KC and Christina Haeger with Ovations Digital. And I am going to go ahead and hand it over to you both. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandy, and thank you to the Women's Business Center for having us. We are so appreciative. We have a chock full information session for you today and a nice way that we can all take a break from election updates. So as Brandy said, my name is Christina Haeger, and I'm the president of Ovations Digital, a Kansas City-based social media strategy and digital firm. And so I'm a social media strategist. And what that really means is I help individuals, businesses, and organizations use social media strategically to reach their business goals. And I have clients in both the B2B and the B2C areas: health, wellness, fitness, beauty, fashion, e-commerce, restaurants, brick and mortar stores, as well as construction, apps, technology, consultants, and then individual thought leaders like physicians, a lot of C-suite and executives, business leaders, speakers, authors, really anyone who wants to be the thought leader in their area. And of course, nonprofits and the arts, which has a special passion of mine. I write for Forbes on social media and digital strategy. I'm a member of the Forbes Communications Council. And just like many of you joining me today, I am a business owner. So I really understand, and Aviva and I both understand, all of the hats you must wear as a business owner. And that's why we are extra excited to be able to present classes like this, because we really want to give you the best ROI for your social media efforts.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, everyone. I'm Aviva Ajmera, co-founder and CEO of Solve KC. And Solve has been giving a version of this class for the last 4 years all over Kansas City to entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized businesses, and nonprofit organizations. But I'm always extra excited when I get to present with Christina. Christina is my personal social media guru, so I know everyone is in for a big treat today. I also wanted to give a big shout out and thank you to the Women's Business Center for sponsoring our entire social media series. They have so generously made these classes free to everybody, and so I wanted to thank them for that. We have had so much success with our social media for business series with hundreds of people across the US and even about a dozen countries around the world joining us. And it's been really exciting for us. And we can see by the sign up list and those of you that have signed on live today that a lot of you have been following us throughout our entire series. And we are just thrilled and thank you for that. Like Christina, Solve KC has B2B, B2C clients. We also have nonprofit clients, and we do a lot of strategic planning and implementation work for our clients. Often, we also work with their board of directors to help them become high performing. And common to all of this work is marketing and social media. Personally, I've been a part of a large international packaged goods company for 15 years. I've belonged to 2 different international B2B consulting firms, collectively about 10 years. And now I've owned Solve KC for almost 7 years. And every company uses social media differently. So our hope for you today and throughout our series, and you've heard us say this before, is that you will figure out what's best for you. We are going to teach you tips and tricks and insider insights, and we love sharing real local business examples as well. It's really for you to be able to adjust and figure out, where do I fit in on all of this? I mentioned it early in the chat for those of you that had signed on early, but we would love for you to let us know if you are B2B, B2C, or nonprofit, and let us know the name of your organization. And Christina and I will do our best to support you and all of your social media efforts. And we always welcome you to follow us. We've got a slide at the very end, but we are on Facebook personally and business, LinkedIn personally and business, Instagram personally and business. And Christina's also on Twitter. I am not. And we'll be really candid about why Twitter's not the best fit for my business. So please feel free to connect to us. We would love to help you with all your social media efforts. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Our agenda for the next 90 minutes or so, we are going to start with just a handful of slides laying the groundwork on why social media is so important. Social media has been affected by the pandemic, just like all of us and all of our businesses have. So we'll share with you some current information on how some of those shifts have occurred. And then we're going to share with you a little bit about how to speak social, because we know the vernacular in some cases is specific to a platform. Sometimes it crosses platforms. And oftentimes it just gets really confusing. So we don't want you to be confused. So we're going to walk you through the ones that are most applicable for Instagram and Twitter. And then we'll start talking about Instagram. We're going to share some key information that you should know as you sort through if it's right for your business, share some local success examples, and we're going to talk about stories and influencers. And then we're going to pause at the end of that section to have some Q&A. Then we'll talk about Twitter. We'll follow a very similar format. We'll go through some statistics and information for you to figure out if it's right for your business. We'll share some local examples. We'll talk about how, if customer service is a component of your business, Twitter is really a phenomenal platform for you. And then we're going to have an extremely topical topic, Twitter and the election. We were literally updating these slides last night and early this morning to give you some relevant content for Twitter. And then we'll pause for some Q&A. And then we'll wrap up at the very end. We'd like to share with you some tools that will help you with your social media efforts. We know it can be a little overwhelming. We don't want you to feel overwhelmed. So we'll share with you our favorite tools, and then just recap with some do's and don'ts and tips for building your calendar. And just a reminder, Brandy did send out some handouts to everyone who signed up for our class today. They are not 100% inclusive of all of our slides. Those will be included in the recording, but we included about 13 slides that we thought would be most helpful for you, so you can take notes as we go along. Okay, so what comes to mind when you think about social media? A lot of us, when we first started learning about social media, we didn't grow up with it like our kids did or our grandkids did. And I know that sometimes the thought is, you know, social media, it's got its place, but really it's kind of teaching the current generation that they don't need to learn how to have a conversation face-to-face anymore. They just communicate through their devices, even if they're only standing a foot apart from each other. So maybe you don't have the greatest thoughts about social media. It could be, it's kind of like chemistry. I'm a little worried about it. I'm a little concerned that if I kind of mix the wrong things together, I might have an explosion on my hands. Well, we are here to assure you, you will not have an explosion on your hands. And those of us that are a little bit older, remember when the Rubik's Cube came out and we were kiddos, and it was like a challenge, right? We knew it was a solvable puzzle. It took a lot of determination and fortitude, but we knew we could figure it out. That's where we're hoping all of you will be by the time we finish with you today.
So why is social media so critical for your business? And if you've joined us for some of the previous sessions, you've seen this slide and you've heard us talk about it. So 74% of consumers rely on social media to make buying decisions. Not only that, but 71% of consumers who experience positive customer service in some form or fashion through social media, they're likely to recommend that brand or business to someone else. And companies that have great social media customer service, they're likely to see a 92% customer retention. So social media is so critical, whether you're on the B2B or B2C side, in how you're going to relate with your consumers. More importantly, as Aviva said, we're all different generations on this call, as are your consumers. Gone are the days where a generation knows what a catalog is or is used to picking out items in it. Just as important as what your product is how a product or organization or business makes a consumer feel. And that's what they're going off of to engage with you and to buy your services. And for the first time, we have that user experience piece really playing heavily. Now, the largest demographic on both Twitter and Instagram, the largest demographic are millennials. And so it's important to understand the millennial perspective. Maybe you don't sell to millennials, and so you're not worried about it. But right now, millennials have $200 billion in spending power. And over their entire lifetimes, they will have $10 trillion in spending power. So to ignore them is a huge mistake. And furthermore, maybe you're in the B2B space or you're a business leader and you're not maybe as concerned with millennials, but it's important to know that this year, for the first time, millennials are overtaking any other generation as the most populous in the workplace, with 50% of those in the workplace being millennials by the end of next month. So if you're a B2B service or a nonprofit or a B2C company, odds are the person on the other end of the phone or the other end of the computer, it is a millennial. So it's important to know how they spend and how they work and how they interact with products. Just as important to know right now is what we call social media in the time of the virus. What's gone on? So between last year and this year, we saw an increase in the population by about 1%, but we saw an increase in social media use by about 8%. And in March and April, we see, and what this table demonstrates is how social media was increasing across every single age group once COVID hit. And it made sense. We were all at home, we were all isolating or quarantining in some way or another. And so people were really using it. They were using social media to get their news. Gosh, especially Twitter, which we'll talk about later. 62% of Americans use social media to get their news. 43% of consumers find it reassuring to hear from brands during uncertain times. They want to know how you're responding to COVID. And actually, 33% of people say that if they don't hear from a business or organization during this pandemic, they worry that that business is no longer financially solvent. And so they will not give their dollars to that organization because they think they won't be around. By and large, we also see about a third of employees see that if their companies, and more importantly, if their leadership at their companies are not posting on social media, they worry that their jobs are at risk. So we see that the way people are using social media right now during the pandemic, personally, professionally, as consumers, it has changed.
So if you've been following us throughout our series, one of the things that we encourage you to think about is which social media platform is right for you. If you're already on one or two social media platforms, maybe now's the time to add one or two. But if you're not, but you know you should, this chart is a great way to try to figure out what's best for you. We call this the money chart. This chart was built from about 20 different resources, and we update it every single time we give the class. So if anybody joined us the last series in July or even earlier in this series, some of the data has actually been updated. So let's go through what they are so you can kind of sort in your mind where to put Instagram and Twitter in the context of your business. So I think most of us know that Facebook is the #1 most popular social platform. LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network. Twitter is the second most recognized social platform, and Instagram is the second most popular social platform. So now let's talk about each in a little bit more detail. Facebook is by far the #1 social media site to influence purchase. And the main reason is it has so many people on it every single day. So 70% of US adults and 51% of US teens. From a business standpoint, there are over 90 million Facebook business pages. Facebook Stories also has a lot of activity, 300 million active users daily. And the next statistic has actually gone up. The average amount of daily time for users on Facebook used to be 58 minutes, but our most recent data shared with us that it has gone up to 75 minutes. It's not all at one time. For those of us that are on Facebook know, it's kind of the fill-in activity. You're waiting for something. You're not, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your next Zoom call. It's a great thing to be able to pop in and out of, sometimes 8 times a day. And what it's best for are photos, videos, links, and events. I mean, Facebook is really kind of the catch-all for everything. So LinkedIn, which we talked about last week, is really around business-oriented social networking. It is great for news and articles and even trying to start a conversation. It's phenomenal for connecting with top industry influencers. There are over 40 million business pages, and LinkedIn skews a little bit higher when it comes to age. So 79% are over the age of 35, and 44% of users have an income of 75K or higher. If you are a B2B business, LinkedIn is where 90 million senior level influencers are and 64 million decision makers. And they just added stories about 3 weeks ago. And that's something that you should also check out. I promise you, you will not have a chemistry explosion. I did it, and I'm always a little nervous about it. LinkedIn is great for networking. It's ideal for building professional credibility. And if you are a B2B business, you should be on LinkedIn. Instagram is a social sharing site really built around 60-second videos. 90% of users are under the age of 35. So really kind of a flip from LinkedIn if you think about demographic. However, those that are 55 and older are actually experiencing the greatest growth, and 75% of US businesses are on Instagram. On average, users are spending about 53 minutes a day, and that number has also gone up. Instagram is best for mobile devices. There is some new added functionality off of your laptop, but it is still really best on your mobile device. It is best for photos and videos and stories. And if you have an image-friendly business, and we'll share some local examples with you later today, Instagram is an ideal platform for you. Okay, so let's talk about Twitter. Twitter has increased the limit to their posts. They are now up to 280 characters, and it's great for conversation, customer questions, and real-time news. So Twitter has about 600 million users. It is where hashtags were created, and we are going to talk about hashtags today. And 67% of businesses are on Twitter. It's best for PR, news, real-time customer engagement, photos, videos, and links.
Thank you, Aviva. So if you're interested in learning more about those other platforms, now that you've heard her talk about it, we'll remind you that the Women's Business Center on their YouTube channel, you can access our social media one-on-one, our Facebook, or our LinkedIn 201s, or you can join us next time we offer them in January, and we'll we'll have more to share then. Anyways, before we really dive into Instagram, it's important that when you go on a trip to another country, you learn a little bit of the language, right? You're learning how to say hello and ask where the bathroom is and all these important things. And so it's important that we learn how to speak social so you understand the terminology, but more importantly, so you can translate how to understand the ROI of your efforts and how to measure them. So when we talk about users in a platform, we're not talking about your grown children who are sticking around and eating all your food and not paying rent. We're just talking about people who are literally using and in those platforms or the channel. Likes refer to people on Twitter or Instagram who hit that heart button. And your feed is when you open up Twitter or Instagram on your phone or your desktop, and you have that rolling list of content. If you use Facebook, you will recognize your feed, and it's where they show you everything that people or businesses are posting. Engagement refers to anyone who shares, likes, or comments on a post or even an Instagram story. And engagement is really important because it's how you know that people are seeing your content and actually responding to it. After all, social media is designed to be social. So it's a two-way street, two-way communication. Retweet, this is someone who shares your tweet or your content onto their page with or without commenting on it. And then a handle refers to your unique name on the platform. My personal one is at Christina M. Haeger on both Instagram and Twitter, or at Ovations Digital, or at Ovations D on either channel. If you want to tag someone, you just tag them by pressing at and starting to type in their handle. And that's how you can tag someone, like you might tag them on Instagram or Facebook if you're more familiar with those channels. And then a DM is a direct message. It's a private message that your business or individually on one of these channels, you can send to someone else on the channel. And of course, we have hashtags. We're going to talk more about that. But a hashtag is basically used to connect content and collect it over a particular topic, theme, date, event. We saw a lot of hashtags in the last week. Hashtag vote, hashtag rock the vote, things like that. And so your organization might have a branded hashtag, or we see hashtags that are for fun. I always use the example hashtag Wine Wednesday because that's today. But really, hashtags do have a great place on Twitter and Instagram for helping optimize your posts. And we'll talk about that a little more. So hashtags were created and invented on Twitter. Did you know they were actually worried that they'd be too nerdy for Twitter? They almost didn't make it. But luckily for us as users and business owners, they did, because a hashtag is really a great way to have like a search engine. So if you think of any channel as a huge library with tons of content, your hashtag is like putting a bookmark right in there so certain topics can go together. It provides you as a business owner or business leader a way to target people with certain interests or topics, because you can add hashtags to your posts. You can create some hype around an event or interest, and you can also curate some content so people can find information. We have a lot of things like hashtag leadership, hashtag C-suite, hashtag B2B. We also, when you're thinking about hashtags, you want to be specific and, make them fun and interesting, but you don't want to make them too long or too clever so that people are trying to puzzle them out. But they really help for discoverability on especially Instagram and Twitter, because there are a lot of posts on Instagram and Twitter. And when you add a hashtag or 2 or 3, or like I'm going to suggest for Instagram, maybe 10 or more, you're basically grouping that post in with other types of content that you want it to be associated with and you want it to be discovered with. So that's why you would use a hashtag. So if you're going to use them, you want to be really specific. On Twitter, you want to stick to 2 or 3, but on Instagram, you can use up to 30. Data tells us this magic number is 11. You can use them on every post. And I'll tell you, hashtags can go a long way to help you with organic SEO or search engine optimization. I had a client a few years ago in Kansas City who the only thing she changed to her strategy was she started using 30 hashtags on every single Instagram post. And she actually started to see that she was going up in the ranking of her Google, in the Google algorithm of people would type in her business name, she was starting to increase in the ranking when people would type in what she did. So they can be used really strategically. If you want to know maybe some hashtags or wondering the efficacy of the hashtags that you're using, Right Tag is a great free tool, and you can type them in and it'll tell you the best hashtags for your business or your topic. So it's really helpful.
Christina, before we jump into Instagram, for folks that maybe didn't have a chance to join us live in our previous class, I will admit I just learned that there's a different magic number for hashtags for the different platforms. So Christina shared with you about Instagram and Twitter. What about LinkedIn, Christina?
So LinkedIn, you really want to stick to 2 to 5. That's sort of the most that you want to do. There might be circumstances in which you'll see my posts have more hashtags than that, but really 3 to 5, 2 to 5 is a magic number. And for Facebook, no more than 3. Facebook will really penalize you if you start to put more than 3 hashtags. It doesn't like it. So please don't put more than 3 on Facebook. Don't penalize yourself.
That's great. Thanks, Christina. I didn't know that. And I was putting, I don't know, 5 or 6, or I kind of thought the more the better. And then I learned you get penalized. And I was like, well, that's not any good. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that. As we start to dig into Instagram and Twitter next, I would love for the group to let us know what you're more interested in if you have a preference. Okay. If not, we've got great content for both, but if you've got a preference one way or another, we can happily talk a little bit more about one platform versus another. So let's talk about Instagram. So the information in the upper left-hand corner is really what's on that money slide that's in your handouts. This slide's also on your handouts. So Instagram, we talked about stories with Instagram, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but a third of the most viewed stories are actually from businesses. So if you haven't tried to use Instagram for your business yet, I highly encourage it. And again, nothing's going to go wrong. Just play around with it and have a little bit of confidence. Honestly, you can ask your kids to help you too. I know the first time I did an Instagram story, I had my 19-year-old daughter help me. And hers looked much better than I did, but at least I was giving it a try. And we shared with you early on that 75% of US businesses use Instagram. So again, we're trying to do this to encourage you to use Instagram. And brands on average post 2.5 stories per week. All right, so 81% of users on Instagram use it to research products and services, which again, if you're a business, that makes sense. 83% discover new products and services on the platform. I can tell you that I follow several new restaurants here in Kansas City because Instagram is the primary way that they communicate to their customers. Engagement is fantastic on Instagram. It's 58% higher than Facebook and 120% higher than Twitter. And I bet you didn't know that. So I'm so glad you're with us here today so you can learn a little bit more about how to optimize your efforts for your business on Instagram. So we talked about how from an age demographic standpoint, 55 and older are the fastest growing demographic, and 60% of the world's top brands use Instagram. So I pulled this chart together just so you can glance down the list and you can see it's fashion, it's makeup, it's very pretty, beautiful, lend themselves to great photography kinds of businesses. 90% of accounts follow at least one brand, and 80% use it to make buying decisions. So a little fun fact for you, if you ever wondered where the word Instagram came from, it comes from instant camera and telegram.
I love a little fun fact. So let's say you want to use Instagram for your business. Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to create a business account. It's free, but it gives you some different features than a personal account would do. Then you need to build a profile and link to your website. On Instagram, you are only given one little space where you can have a clickable URL. So use it wisely. Now you can change it. So you may want to drive traffic to a website, or you may want to drive traffic to a particular event, or if you're on, a place that they can donate. Giving Tuesday is coming up. So just know you can change that. Some quick tips. You want to post regularly and at key times. That's always the same across social media. Use your hashtags. Try 11. If you've only been using 3, try 10 or 11. You can put them in the comments of your Instagram post. You don't need to put it up with the copy. You can use shoppable post, which is if you're a business, not a personal account, you can create a little Instagram store like you can on Facebook, and people can actually click on the product if you tag it with something you have in your Instagram store. And a great way to increase engagement is to run a giveaway or a promotion on Instagram. People love these. You see these probably all the time if you use Instagram personally, but I will give a caveat. Make sure you follow the rules and guidelines. You can just Google it. The most important thing is to say this contest is neither sponsored by nor affiliated with Instagram. They really want you to do that, or they could throw your contest right off of Instagram, and you don't want that. And you want to engage with your followers. So I'm going to give you a huge pro tip that you are not going to get anywhere else, is you need to utilize something called the 5x5 methodology. So no matter what your business is, you have other accounts that you would love to be associated with, right? And so you probably know what those businesses and accounts are. And so if you use Instagram personally or professionally, you'll see that if you start to follow a new account, Instagram will auto-populate some other accounts that you should start to follow. How do those accounts get there? What does it use? How does it figure out what goes there? Well, I'm going to tell you what to do for your business. You choose 5 other accounts that you want to be associated with. And on each of those accounts, you leave 5 comments on 5 different posts. So altogether 25 comments. It can be love your product, this is great, go Kansas City, whatever it looks like. And then the algorithm of Instagram will start to recognize that you are somehow associated or go with those other accounts. And so it makes sense. So if you're a restaurant in the Brookside area, you may want to give some love to other restaurants in the Brookside area because you want to be associated with that, or perhaps some shopping opportunities in Brookside, or perhaps the plaza. You get the idea, but it's really important to do this. You can do this as much as you want, once a week, once a month. I recommend making it a part of your strategy for your business account. And also, as Aviva talked about Instagram stories, we really recommend making that a piece of your strategy as well. Now, we shared these 3 business accounts because if you want some ideas about what you should be doing for content, these are great businesses. Now, they're great big brands, but they offer awesome content. Nike does a great job of profiling athletes. Oreo is actually one of the top 10 Instagrams that entrepreneurs should watch because of the way they post. They do little 10 or 15-second videos and they get a ton of likes and engagement, and their use of color is amazing. This is actually FedEx. And what FedEx does an awesome job is they use what's called user-generated content. And that just means content made by you, a regular Jane or Joe sitting at home, not the company, and it repurposes it for their own use. So it may, ask people like us to submit photos, or this one I think came from a FedEx driver. So it's really cool, and user-generated content is very popular on Instagram. People love sharing their photography. They love sharing their videos. So don't shy away from, as a business, asking for user-generated content.
Yeah, I love that 5x5 methodology. And, we'd also recommend you, if you're a little unsure of what kinds of things to post or what you should even put in the words, just Google search top 10, whatever. It could be your industry. It could be just businesses on Instagram. It can be whatever slice you want, and start following them on Instagram. And you'll get a sense of what kinds of things they post, and you can also see how many hearts they get, so you can get a sense of what kinds of content is really, really popular. So we always love sharing with you big national brands as inspiration, but we've also got a couple of local brands that we would love to share with you. So For some local success examples, as we noted earlier, key for Instagram is beautiful imagery. We would also say customize your keywords. So just like Christina said, pick 5 businesses that affiliate with your business. Think about the keywords that are relevant to your business as well, and use those in your posts. User generated, as we talked about, drives more engagement, but please don't feel like that's the only kind of post that you should have, because there's no question there's a big place for business generated posts as well. Photos and a location receive 79% more engagement. If you add another handle, like Christina said, tag someone else, tag a location, you'll get 50%, 56% more engagement. And at least one hashtag, up to 30, gets you more engagement as well. And photos are actually more popular than videos. And photos with a face get 38% more than photos without a face. So let's look at a couple of local examples. The first 3 pictures are of a dear friend of mine. Her name is Lauren Lane, and she made a career change at 50. And she's now a culinarian, and I will highly encourage you all to just follow her. Lauren does an amazing job of just mixing up all of her posts and keeping it really interesting. She does stories, she does recipes, she does entertaining. She'll do gardening of herbs as it relates to making her recipes. And she segments her stories in a bunch of different categories so people that are doing searches for them can find them. When you look at her posts, I'm just going to give you a fair warning. Your mouth is going to water. You're going to want to wish you're one of Lauren's friends and you're getting invited to one of her intimate dinner parties. Another great local example are our friends Micah and Diana Lacerte. So they own a transformation business called HitchFit. And they've been around about 12 years, and they've been named year upon year upon year as the #1 in the world virtual training program. They also do a really incredible job of mixing up the kinds of posts. And just because of space, I couldn't even begin to do it justice. But sometimes it's quotes that are very inspiring and encouraging. They get featured a lot on the covers of magazines. So occasionally you'll see something like the Magnum cover. That's who Diana and Micah are. In the upper right-hand corner of this 4 spot, they're showcasing some transformation. So real life clients who they've gotten the permission to show before and after shots. And then, yeah, occasionally they'll run promotions because at the end of the day, they're a business and they want to incent you to buy their product. But it's just a really small snapshot of the huge range. And I will tell you, they are active on every single platform. So you can follow them on Instagram. You can also follow them on Facebook, and you can follow them on LinkedIn. And I know Micah is on Twitter as well. So if you're looking for someone that's across platforms, that might be a really neat business for you to follow just to kind of get some ideas.
I just want to point out, I love that Aviva gives us, we're going to eat the food from Lauren Lane and go visit Micah and Diana to give our transformation. I love that. But both of these businesses as individuals and business leaders, they do a fantastic job across social. So do follow them, and great local businesses if you live here in Kansas City. So let's talk a little bit about Instagram stories. Instagram stories were a newer feature to Instagram. They didn't show up just at the beginning when Instagram did. And so what are they? Stories are posts, pictures, and little videos, and they disappear after 24 hours. So this was Instagram's reaction or answer to Snapchat, if you've heard of that or used that. And they're viewed in a slideshow format on top of the feed. So you don't have to go searching for them. They're at the very top of your phone. And they are a great way to increase authentic engagement because they look a little more casual than your branded content. And the great thing is they roll into one another. They're little 10-second increments, and they roll into one another seamlessly like a commercial would on television. And so A personal Instagram story can roll right into a major brand Instagram story that can roll right into a nonprofit. It's very seamless. And so when I'm looking at Instagram stories, I'll see Aviva's Instagram story, and then my friend Dixie's stories, and then I'll see Nike stories, and then I'll see the Hitch Fit people stories. But the great way is, because I'm looking at them right after my personal friend, it connects me to the brand in a more intimate way. I feel like they're my friends as well. And that's a great reason to use stories. Now, they disappear after 24 hours, but don't fear, because you can actually save your stories and create little highlight albums across the top of your account. And that's a great way to let someone have a little snapshot of what you as an organization, business, individual have to offer. A third of the stories come from businesses. Brands are really using them. 62% of people are saying that they're more interested in a service or project after seeing a story. And so we're really seeing that although stories used to be maybe just something that individuals were using, they are a really great part of any marketer's plan for using social media. These are some little stories that Aviva and I created from last time we did this class, and see how they look really casual. You can put some text on top of an image. You can use what we call stickers, which are these little, like the computer or that thing that says link in bio. It's a lot of things that are animated. And while you can plan your stories in advance, you cannot post them in advance using a third-party tool. You still have to post them in real time. And it's nice because it keeps that authentic look and feel to them. And so you can make the most of your stories by running polls or asking questions of your audience. Who doesn't want to get into the mindset of your customers and consumers, right? You can add little effects, music, stickers, things to make them fun, sure. But not only that, it makes them more interesting to your end user, and it makes them a different way of engagement. And that's really what we're all for. Is, again, social media is a two-way street. No matter what your service is, B2B or B2C, you need to connect with your consumer. It should be noted, and you might already know, Instagram is owned by Facebook. And so they have a really great synchronous relationship. In fact, Facebook Business Suite was a feature just added in this last month, and it was actually added by Facebook as a reaction to the pandemic and to helping small businesses who are, having a harder time because of the pandemic. And basically, it gives you a way to seamlessly post to both Instagram and Facebook at the same time in the same place, to manage your messages in both places, to see your analytics of both platforms in the same place. So that's really great. Content that you post to Instagram, because it's owned by Facebook, always does well when it's also posted to Facebook. Facebook prioritizes it through its algorithm. We talked a lot about the Facebook algorithm in our Facebook 201. And you can build Instagram ads in your Facebook ads manager and then seamlessly view everything. And it really just gives you two opportunities to reach your target demographic per one piece of content. So understanding that relationship is really essential. Also, you can create a story in Instagram and seamlessly share it to Facebook. This is great. As a business owner, a business leader, as a marketer, you're busy. So this saves you time and effort, and it gives you kind of a 2-for-1, and you'll likely see more engagement because of that. All right, so we're going to shift and talk about Instagram influencers. So firstly, what is an influencer? There's a lot of chatter about this, and influencers have become huge in the world of social media, especially Instagram, although you can have influencers on every single platform. So really, an influencer is someone who has the power to affect the purchasing decisions of others because of his or her knowledge, authority, or relationship with an audience. Well, look at these ladies over here. So you might recognize this whole crew, this Kardashian gender smorgasbord of brown hair. And so they are some of the top influencers in the world. And so because of that, when Kylie Jenner posts something to Instagram, people take note. She has millions of followers. Now, she is a huge macro influencer. That's someone with a ton of followers. probably the influencers that you work with for your organization will not be the Jenners. They will not be those macro influencers that, brands like MAC Cosmetics are using, or even Microsoft or Coca-Cola. You might use bloggers who are a form of influencers, podcasters, YouTubers, celebrities or local voices, key opinion leaders. And there are all types of influencers, all the way down to micro influencers, which is if they have probably less than 10,000 followers, or even nano influencers. This is someone in the space with like 1,000 followers, but maybe they're really particular to your niche. Maybe when it comes to tech or apps, you might want to engage a micro or nano influencer to help you get your message out to a larger group of people. And so consider, if you want to start using that you might think about bloggers or micro influencers. And certainly if you live here in Kansas City, there are definitely micro influencers. There are definitely bloggers in whatever the space that you're in. You could, as we're talking about Micah and Dan Lacerte at HitchFit, they are seen as influencers. And it's a great way really to have your product and your services expanded to a larger audience.
Okay, so we are going to take a few minutes and do some Q&A. So this is a question that we get asked very often, and we thought that it would be beneficial to all of you today. So the question is, how do I know if I should share something in a story or a post?
Think about what it is, what the piece of content is, and what it's intended to do. So if it's evergreen, you might want, and it's going to, be relevant for a long time, you might want to post it on your feed. If it's going to expire in a certain date, like a sale, a flash sale, things about the election, put that in a story. If you're looking for a lot of engagement from your followers or answers, run a poll. There's an actual ask a question sticker that you can put onto an Instagram story where people can type in an answer right there. Does the content look professional? Does it mirror the rest of your page? And what we mean by that is your Instagram page or profile, it should all, especially as a business, it should all have a similar look and feel. So if you have something that doesn't really match that, maybe it's best to go into a story and think about how long you want people to have access to that content. And also, again, using stories as a way to engage your followers is great. So remember though, even though a story can disappear after 24 hours, you can always put it in a highlight album. And then when you're thinking about the content, Aviva gave us the interesting fact that really I think is only relevant on Instagram, that people prefer to engage with photos versus videos. However, 70% of users watch stories with their sound on. So if you do have a video, probably you might think that the place to put that is not in your feed when it's not going to get the best interaction or engagement, but maybe you put that in your Instagram stories. We also get the question, how do I know if I should have a personal or business Instagram account? This is our friend. She attended our first session. She's an amazing local artist, Jenny Meyer McCall. And so she is a one-woman shop. She is her business. So she might have thought, well, I could just have a personal Instagram. After all, it's just me and I'm sharing, my personal work. However, she's very smart and she got a business Instagram. And here's why. She's providing a service. She has a Facebook business page. She does have things she can shop for. You can see there's a little gift card button on there. She has different art that you can purchase through her Instagram. She would not be able to do any of that with just a personal account. Also, she wouldn't be able to see any of her insights. And insights are basically her analytics. Who's looking at her page for how long? What posts are doing well? She wouldn't be able to have those shoppable posts or be able to schedule her post in the same way if she had a personal Instagram. So it's really important. And I urge you, just like Aviva and I urged you for Facebook, if you have a business or service, even if it is just you, still get a business page. Even if it's just you as an author, a speaker, a consultant, having a business page just gives you so much more flexibility, rather a business account. And it gives you a lot of features that you may not use at this exact moment, but as you grow, you will use in the future.
That's great, Christina. We've got some great questions here. So Let's just see how many of them we can answer. The first question was around micro influencers, and how do you find micro influencers in your area?
Great question. So you might, it depends on your industry, and everyone sort of knows in the area in which they live the business leaders or the people who are, we like to say running the town in any industry. But if you're new to an area or you don't really know, the almighty Google. And so you can actually Google top influencers in blank in where you live or in your industry. You might also look at your competitors or people or accounts that are doing really well, that are sort of associated. And the more you see, wow, it seems like they have a lot of engagement, or they're a local blogger, or they're a blogger that talks about, the things you do. So you'll have to do a little bit of digging on that. Certainly as you get into larger influencers or even a really niche area. One of my clients works with orthodontic and dental influencers. Did you even know there was such a thing? And so those are really small and specific. A lot of those influencers have managers. And so sometimes you need to engage a social media strategist or someone who works in social media to help you make those inroads or even manage those contracts. But you can do things on your own. You just have to do a little more digging and homework. The more you are on social media, on Instagram or on Facebook, whatever that space is, the more that you will see and learn who those people are in your industries.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christina. And then the next question is, it's actually a series of questions. Let me read them all because they're very connected. Should every post be turned into a story? How often should we post stories? Should hashtags and tags be included with the stories? And how many should be used of each?
Okay, such a good question. So whatever your social media strategy is, and so ideally, before you put forth any of these efforts, you're backing up a step, and Aviva and I will talk about this at the end, and you're deciding what you want to use each channel for. And so you know that if you really want to increase your brand awareness, or you really want to build engagement, then you're going to use Instagram in a different way than if you just sort of want to maintain status quo, in which I would say post less. Your stories, because they disappear every 24 hours, I say if you can do some stories every day, great. They don't take very much time because they're more casual. You can use hashtags and tag people in stories. For tagging people, you're limited to 10 accounts per story. On hashtags, you can either tag people in text, or there's actually a hashtag functionality, and the hashtag functionality in stories only lets you do one hashtag. But if you do hashtags as a text option, you can do more. And I'm sorry, I don't know the exact limit. I've never encountered that. Did I hit everything?
Yeah, I think so. So then, great question that we do get asked a lot. How do you increase followers and likes? And how long does it take? It's like the big unknown question. How long does it take?
So there's nothing black and white about social media. And so I can't say if you do this for 2 weeks, you will see this, because it depends on the space, the content, what it looks like. But I will give you some hints and tips and tricks. The more you engage, your business, organization, nonprofit engages on social media with your followers, not only engaging by posting content, but by putting comments on other people's posts, the more followers and connections and engagement you will have. The more hashtags you use, you will pick up some followers just using hashtags. The more stories you put, you will pick up followers just doing those things. The 5x5 methodology, you will pick up followers. One thing I will say, you can buy followers. You can eat cake for every single meal. I would not advise it. I mean, maybe I would today, but I would not advise it on the regular to do that. And so I would suggest that buying followers is a bad idea. And instead, I would make sure that you're getting followers the authentic way, which is posting great, consistent content that's not overly promotional. The less promotional, we have a sale, buy our product, do this, do that, the less of that kind of content, the more people are going to like the content and respond to it.
Yeah, very true. So you mentioned 5x5, Christina. We did have a question that wanted to understand, maybe you can break down the math again for folks on
Sure.
how that 5x5 actually comes to life.
Sure. So pick 5 accounts that you want to be associated with. And for one of those accounts, find 5 different posts and write 1 comment on each of those posts, and do that 5 times. So a total of 25 comments. And that's a great way to start that. You're also increasing your engagement. And also it puts you on the radar for the followers of those particular accounts.
Great. Okay. So then a follow-up on the 5x5 is, how often do you recommend doing it?
There's no real answer to this, but my recommendation is I like to do this at least once a month to make sure I'm doing it. You could do it every single week, and that would be great. It just starts to become one of those things I think that a lot of us forget about, or, get busy. And so I would schedule it for the beginning of the month or the middle of the month and say, I need to at least get this done once a month. Now, that shouldn't be your only engagement. You should also continue to engage with other people and channels on Instagram, but that's a good way to go about that. And in fact, if you want to start to see some, synchronicity, if you're on like we said, if you're on the call today and you want to drop your Instagram handle, we'll be happy to follow you, and we'll give you a little comment on one of those posts, and follow each other on Instagram and your organizations, and help each other out a little bit, trying to get some motion going on your Instagrams.
Right. Okay. That's great, you guys. And we love these questions. So we're going to segue over to Twitter, but feel free to keep your questions coming. And I'm going to do my best to keep track of it as they all start coming in. So let's start with some fast facts for Twitter. We chatted earlier. It's really best for public relations and real-time customer engagement. So here's some stats. 22% of adult Americans are on Twitter. Gen Z is actually the highest demographic on Twitter. And we mentioned earlier that Twitter does skew a little bit older and a little bit more educated. In addition to that, when we think about the news, which I know a lot of us have been tuned into the news lately, 12% of the general population gets their news on Twitter, but over 75% of Twitter users get their news from Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, you're probably pretty darn engaged in it. And it's kind of your go-to source. Rather than opening up the paper in the morning, people that are on Twitter will just go to their Twitter app and kind of see what's happened since the last time they checked. Watching video has become more and more popular. It's the #3 reason people use Twitter. But keep in mind, the lifespan of a tweet is just 7 minutes. So as you think about if Twitter is right for your business, keep in mind that brands typically post between 3 and 30 times a day. And that's why I can tell you, as a business consultant, Twitter doesn't really matter for my business. It's not the right social media platform for my business, okay? And it's okay to say something's not the best fit. I use other platforms for my business, but we wanted to share this with you because Twitter is incredibly powerful, and it's really exciting because it's so quick and it's so real time, but there is a legitimate commitment that you're gonna need to make to Twitter to really be successful and to be able to break through people's feeds and for it to make a difference for your business.
So let's talk about a business that it did make a difference for. And I love talking about how Wendys won Twitter. All right, so in 2017, Wendys started using this different marketing approach. They wanted sweet little pigtailed Wendy. They wanted to rebrand her as sassy and challenging. That's also the nickname for my 5-year-old, sassy and challenging. So people got into it and they liked it because Wendy's new tone on Facebook was she was a little sassy and challenging. And so she wasn't afraid to speak their mind. So people, individuals, and even businesses and companies got into it, and they started asking Wendy to kind of roast them. And this was really popular. And within 6 months, Wendy's gained almost 300,000 followers. Why? Well, they would talk to almost everybody. They would answer people's tweets. A typical tweet from Wendy's at that time had about 10,000 shares and 300,000 likes. And so they really stuck to what was working, which was targeting to millennials, roasting these accounts, things like that. But then they struck gold with this Nugs for Carter. Sweet Carter, he's a 16-year-old kid, and he tweeted one day at Wendy's, "Hey, Wendy's, how many retweets do I need to get for free nuggets?" I like this kid. I like his ideas. And so just off the cuff, Wendy's answered back 18 million. All right, so Carter went for it. So he started retweeting it. Wendy's played along, which is really fun. Again, play along on Twitter and Instagram and all social media, really, with your followers and consumers. Again, this 16-year-old kid, he probably wasn't to frequent Wendy's and make a huge dent to their stakeholders, right? He wasn't going to buy that many nuggets. But what he did was provide Wendy's with an opportunity that the more and more that this tweet was retweeted by his friends and their friends and their friends' parents and their friends' parents, all of a sudden it started to go viral. When a tweet is retweeted so many times, it takes on a life of its own. And it was incredible. It snowballed. Ellen DeGeneres retweeted it. She even had him on the show. The cast of Breaking Bad, really popular at that time, they retweeted it. Microsoft and Apple, they retweeted it. People were really into this kid getting his nuggets. And Wendy's kept talking about it because they saw a golden user-generated opportunity come to life. And so really what happened? Well, the kid did not make his 18 million retweets, but he does hold the record for the most retweeted tweet of all time, 3.4 million times. Nugs for Carter, the hashtag Nugs for Carter was used on every single tweet. That's how they kept track of this. This is a 346% increase in online conversions for Wendy's. So this is amazing. 2.5 billion impressions for their Twitter. And because Wendy's, went in on it, they gave Carter his nuggets for life anyways, right? They donated $100,000 for the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, which was really, really cool because they got this free publicity. And this fun fact is Carter opened up his own t-shirt company, Nugs for Carter, which is fabulous. But the really amazing thing is Wendy's experienced amazing growth because of this. They could not figure out how to market to millennials. And they hit upon kind of a brilliant talent meets opportunity. And for the first time ever, they were able to break in and sell to their under 30 millennial demographic. And for the first time ever, their sales increased and hit that $10 billion global sales. And they had an increase in 49.7% in their profits that year. It was a win, 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 win for Wendy's. And so this has been super successful for them. And really, it's because they were engaging with every single person that engaged with them. They could have let this little 16-year-old kid go off without a hitch, ignore him. But because they played the social media game correctly, they were able to embrace and take advantage of this opportunity. Now, this is striking gold when it comes to social media. Odds are none of us will probably experience the amazingness, but if you don't engage with your consumers or your followers, you'll never even have the potential to see what your gold Nugs for Carter could be.
That's a great story. I love the Nugs for Carter story.
Me too. I love Carter. So let's talk about businesses. So the average Twitter user follows 5 businesses. And 80% of all Twitter users have mentioned a brand in a tweet. 60% of a brand's followers will purchase or recommend a product to a friend. So people are engaging with brands on Twitter purposefully. And so if you want to get your business started on Twitter, you need to build your profile that stands out, that's fully optimized, create a branded hashtag, and you need to tweet, especially during those peak hours. Boulevardia is a great local to Kansas City business. They have their hashtag BLVDIA. They use it amazingly. They tag Boulevard Beer. If you look at these tweets, you can see amazing use of pictures and imagery and color. They use some emojis. So they do a lot of great things. So I would suggest following them because it's a great way to see how you can use Twitter for your business. And really, if you're going to use Twitter, you need to have all these best practices. Tweets with hashtags, they get 100% more engagement. Tweets with images, 89% more hearts. Video, tweets with video, they get 10% or 10 times, the engagement, 6 times the chance of being retweeted. And so KC SourceLink, which is also a great opportunity for you to follow someone here. They are great with cross functionality and cross business and disciplines. They're making excellent use of hashtags, excellent use of images. And so there's someone more in the B2B realm that you can follow and see what they're doing. And don't forget to use Twitter for customer service. When a business responds to a customer's tweet, it's very public facing. Twitter is very public facing in general. You don't have the gatekeeping of LinkedIn or Facebook where you have to request someone connect or follow you and you follow each other. And pretty much see anything on Twitter unless you have a locked account, which as a business, you're not going to. So when a business responds to a customer's tweet, the customer is willing to spend more, 3 to 20% more on future purchases. They're 44% more likely to share their positive experience with others. They're 30% more likely to recommend that business. And we have all of these demographics and stats that I told you a little bit in the beginning of how businesses with a great approach to customer service, they're retaining their customers by a much higher percentage. And so if you're going to use Twitter for customer service, you need to be prompt. People are expecting you to get to them within a day. Conversational, professional, consistent. There's a little hint of if you sign your tweets with initials, people think there's like the real person behind them and they like them. Also, ask your customers to DM you, that's that private message or direct message you, with relative information, screenshots, so you can help them. Adobe does a great job on Twitter in general. And so this individual said, Photoshop, I love you, but you got to be open, like be able to open or render a PNG file. Help me. So he tagged them. And right away, you can see it's the same date. They said, we're sorry to hear about this. They addressed him by name. This is a known issue, but we're working on it. Can you take a look? And they gave him a resource. Let us know if that helps. Thanks. And they put some initials. So what a great way to help your customers. People come to Twitter often because they're frustrated. I don't know if you've ever been stranded in the Southwest terminal and you've tweeted out Southwest, but usually it's a faster way to get attention than picking up the phone and calling someone. So know that if you're going to be on Twitter, you're opening yourself up for that potentiality. So make sure that you have a way, someone responding to your Twitter, someone managing your Twitter, and someone in charge of responding, so you can use Twitter as a great way to build customer service. Now we're going to talk about something super timely, right? The election. So if you've been on Twitter, or even if you haven't, there are a lot of brands that have really been capitalizing on the election and using the election as a way that they can create great marketing potential on Twitter. So there are a lot of brands. Nike has this You Can't Stop Our Voice, where they're partnering with Lyft, the ride share, to get people to the polls. Patagonia, which by the way, Patagonia is a brand that has awesome social media across everything, LinkedIn, Facebook, everything. Vote the a-holes out. Now, they are not referring to a-holes as Democrats or Republicans. Patagonia really believes in the power of science and climate change. And so they're referring to anyone that doesn't believe or support climate change. So they have this huge voter initiative. Its founding members, along with Levi Strauss, they founded Time to Vote, which is a nonpartisan coalition aimed to help people to get people to the polls. This has about like 880 members, Ben and Jerry's and Nike and Macy's and Lego and all of these other people. So both of these brands, along with Absolute Vodka, have been sharing information about voting. And Absolute did a fun thing about vote first, drink later. And you also used a hashtag on all their content, vote responsibly. And Levi's hashtag vote about it was a great campaign that was actually started by an influencer. So kind of tying our worlds together, Haley Baldwin, of Alec Baldwin, and now married to Justin Bieber. So she has a lot of influence. She's a model herself. So they started a vote about it where they were getting the word out to younger voters. I think she's all of like 23. And so that's a great way to just get the word out. And we also saw that local brands were getting in on it. So Levi's gives us some great images with vote about it. And then Jay Rieger and company here in Kansas City gave some really cute content that says Pepper voted yes on Prop K9, expand access to snacks. So they're getting in some favorite things, puppies, voting, snacks, get out there today and vote and then have a drink. So they're keeping it topical and fun, but also encouraging people to vote. Now, the most important part of this is if your organization is going to jump on the bandwagon of something like the election or Giving Tuesday or Thanksgiving or whatever an event is, you have to be prepared to put your money where your mouth is. So if you're really going to talk about voting, maybe you should give your employees the day off to vote. Or if you're really going to talk about a certain initiative or social cause that you believe in, it's important that if you put that out, social, know that you've given people the open access to actually ask your organization if you're actually doing that in practice. So it's important to remember, if you're going to embrace one of these trends or embrace one of these viral hashtags, know that people then will have the opportunity to ask you about it. Starbucks got in some trouble recently because they were all about voting and people were saying, that's nice, Starbucks, but are you giving your employees time off to vote? No, but they were giving them some money to take a Lyft or an Uber there. So you have to think about what that's going to look like. The second part of this is, and how it might impact you and your business, is Twitter unveiled this civic integrity policy. So basically the way and the functionality in which you could share information on Twitter, they're changing it a little bit. And so they're putting warning labels on tweets with election misinformation. They're prohibiting candidates for calling races early. I actually saw a tweet this morning from a really respected person who votes for the Human Rights Campaign, and she was giving her prediction. I predict candidate X takes this state. And I saw that it had that little warning on it. Warning, this, someone's calling it early. We can't have that. She is not even a candidate. She's just an influencer on Twitter. If you're looking at something with a link to misinformation or a site that's maybe not credible, they'll actually give you a link to a credible source instead. And I think a really interesting thing is when you retweet something, if you haven't read it, you've only read the headline like some of us do, Twitter is now saying, hey, do you want to read this whole article before you retweet it? And if you're quoting a tweet, they're saying, do you want to give a comment instead of retweet? So all of this is to say, Twitter is trying to get you to engage with the material that you're sharing and not just blindly distributing things. And I think that's important for you as a business owner or a business leader, because you need to know the latest on the platforms that you're using. If you are going to be retweeting and engaging with other people, you need to know how that might be viewed by other people and what Twitter might flag or not flag. It's just really important to have the most up-to-date information. This election will be over, but the civic integrity policy will stand in some way, shape, or form. And so again, it's important to know how your consumers are relating to that information.
That's great, Christina. So I'm going to pause here, give Christina a chance to catch her breath, and also just put the request out for all of you. We are going to spend some time on Twitter Q&A, so please feel free to send your questions either into the chat or the Q&A, and I can monitor them. We wanted to start with a question that's really just fundamental. We get asked a lot, even after we share this information, which is, how do I know if Twitter is right for my businesses? I mean, I see the benefits, but there's a lot of commitment to Twitter as well. So Christina, do you want to share a little bit with the group, just kind of recapping how to figure out if it's a great fit for someone's business?
Absolutely. Thanks, Aviva. So as we, talked about before, and as Aviva will talk about at the end, you talk about your strategy, who's your target demographic. So first, are they even on Twitter, right? Are you going to be able to have daily interactions? Is your consumer using Twitter? You have to engage with your audience. Johnny's Tavern is a local restaurant here, and they are head and shoulders above a lot of the organizations, businesses, brands on Twitter. They engage with everyone. They do an awesome job. I give them kudos, and I know the person that runs that social media account, although I didn't know they ran it, and they do an excellent job. And if you can engage in real-time tweeting, not just scheduling your tweets, then it might be right for you. Look at your competition. Is your competition on Twitter? Why or why not? Think about that and know that it's a commitment. Now, for our organizations, our nonprofits, and our business leaders out there, we are seeing the trend of more and more business executives and CEOs setting the tone on Twitter. The CEO of Walmart, excellent. Doug is all over social media in general, does a great job on Twitter. The CEO of Union Square Hospitality, who owns Shake Shack, all over Twitter, and he does a fabulous job. But don't let Twitter become a career limiting risk for you. And what that means is, and I alluded to it beforehand, whatever your organization or you personally post on Twitter, there's a record of it out there. So you have to stand behind it. In March or April, the CEO of CrossFit tweeted out some really interesting things. And guess what? Stakeholders didn't like it. Consumers didn't like it. People started boycotting it. And guess what? He lost his job. And so you have to decide what your organization stands for. Someone like Patagonia or Nike is going to look very different than someone like Johnny's Tavern or Adobe Suite. And you have to decide the things that you will and won't talk about on Twitter, and realize that everything you're putting out there is very public, like all social media. Anyone can take a picture of it. Anyone can repurpose it and show it again later. You deleting it isn't enough. So when you're deciding how you want to use it, I don't want that to scare you. I just want you to be purposeful and understanding of it.
That's great, Christina. Thank you. We actually don't have any other Twitter questions. So what I'm going to offer up to everyone, we have just a handful of slides now as we wrap up. But if you've got more Instagram questions, you can feel free to put those into the chat or the Q&A. And if we've got time before we close, we can try to answer some of those for all of you. So, I can imagine, especially if you've been following us through all of our different classes this past month, this can be a little overwhelming. And I'll be really honest with you, as a small business owner myself, my focus is on my product and the service that I provide. And yet I know how important social media is to keep my company name alive in the marketplace, and to make sure, especially during COVID, that people know, hey, I'm still here. Our business is still doing well. We haven't closed. And as Christina and I were talking about it, and I myself was trying to follow all this great advice that she's been giving us, every single time we talk about social media, I just kind of paused and I said, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. Like, how am I going to have time as one person, to do all of this? And so then we started talking about tools. And so what we wanted you to know is, we don't want you to be overwhelmed. We want you to know that there are tools out there to help you plan your content and your timing. So the first 3 apps are great for content creation. If one of the things that you're worried about when you look at Instagram, for example, is, I don't know how to make all those pretty posts that Aviva and Christina shared, or maybe some companies that are in your space, the way they do it. These are 3 apps that we encourage you to try out, and they'll really help you to make what you post, the actual content, very beautiful. There are also apps that can actually act like your social media person. So these first 3 apps are great scheduling tools, and you've probably heard about them a little bit. We've even used some of the research that they do in our presentation that we just gave to you. Hootsuite is phenomenal, and so is Social Pilot. for always keeping things really current. And now the next two apps that we're going to talk about, they will not only help you with scheduling, but they give you the added sophistication of being able to curate content. So being able to help you find content that's relevant for your business. And we've been talking about these apps throughout our series. So they're not specific to just Instagram or Twitter. They also work for LinkedIn and they also work for Facebook. So you can really gain some efficiency there. And again, you know, I would tell you, and Christina would tell you, they're not hard. So we don't want you to worry about that explosion factor as you're trying something new. We really encourage you to just give it a go and see if they will make your life a little bit easier so that you're able to post with the consistency that we really recommend to help your algorithms. So we've talked about a lot of things. We thought it would be nice to just recap for you in 2 slides. The first one is our do's and don'ts. So common thread to everything is you need to have a social media strategy that correlates and links up with your business goals. So just to post for the sake of posting isn't going to help your business goals. So really sit down and think about, how can I use social media to reflect my goals? So for example, if your goal is to grow in a particular segment or with a certain consumer, that would then influence the type of content, the imagery, what you talk about, what your hashtags are, etc. Also, always think about how each post will impact your brand. Sometimes Christina and I will go through some no-nos as a business, topics that unless you're in a particular industry, we don't recommend as a brand that you put a point of view out there because they can be polarizing. And we don't want you to lose half of your customers because they don't agree with your personal point of view. That's what your personal pages are for. And then when it comes to content, make it fun. Have it be a balance between promotions and incentives and information. Don't have it all be in one lane, because otherwise the people that are viewing your posts, frankly, will get a little bit bored and just kind of keep swiping up. Use it to tell your story. Social media is such a wonderful place to really be authentic without the benefit of being able to have one-on-one conversations. Social media is kind of your surrogate for that. Tell your story in a really beautiful way. We've given you all kinds of fun ways to also engage with your customers, like doing polls and asking questions. And people really enjoy that. Always remain professional. Cannot stress that enough. And then as a business owner, you got to track your results, right? Whether it's time that you're spending or money or both, make sure you know what your key performance indicators are. What's important for your business to track? Is it the number of followers? Is it engagement metrics? So for Instagram and Twitter, it would be things like, how many likes am I getting? How many retweets or regrams, or how many comments do I receive when I post? Keep track of those things. And if ultimately getting whoever's seeing your post to your website or getting them to open your stories or your videos is really important, make sure you're tracking that as well. And then this last one, if any of you have been on our other classes, and I know a lot of you have, is reciprocity. I cannot stress enough how much I encourage you to be a good social media friend, neighbor, connector, etc. So just like you want people to like your posts and comment on your posts, do that for other businesses. Do it for businesses in the Kansas City area. Do it for businesses that you frequent. Do it for businesses that you support, that you like for whatever the reason is. Be a good friend to them. Like their accounts, make comments when it's appropriate. You can share, you can brag about them. There's all kinds of really neat ways in our awesome Kansas City community that as entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofit organizations, we can support each other. It's not only good for your business karma, it's great social media practices because it will help your algorithms and it will help their algorithms. And at the end of the day, the goal is you want all of your effort to make a difference. And practicing reciprocity is a great way to begin to make that difference. Okay, so a little bit about tips for how you build your plan. So we've talked about consistency. Christina and I both shared with you the frequency for Instagram and Twitter. Choose the days and times that you're going to post and select the focus of each. So if you're going to use one of the scheduling tools, that would be wonderful. But there are some things that you can't just schedule, like creating stories and sharing tweets. So figure out what time of the day or week works for you. And honestly, just put it on your calendar. Use it like an appointment. I'm going to spend 30 minutes or I'm going to spend an hour or whatever the case might be. And then plan. We talked about making sure your social media strategy aligns with your business goals. Our guideline is to plan 30 days at a time, but always be flexible because sometimes there are trending topics that are super relevant for your business. And we wouldn't want you to miss out on those just because you had something else scheduled for a particular day or a particular week. We can't stress enough how important it is to set aside time at the end of each month to work on your calendar or use an app or hire somebody to do it for you. So to begin with, if you're wondering how much time you should spend, our recommendation is a minimum of 6 hours a month. And you can break it up if you want to break it up. But our point to you here is if you want to be successful, it's not going to be 15 minutes a month or even 15 minutes a week. You just won't get the most out of it. Gather your photos and your videos that you're going to use. You might get ideas as you go and just put them in a file. We already talked about apps. And then in case you're worried about, gosh, I just don't even know what to post. Like I get this much of it, but if I have to post this often, it seems a little bit overwhelming. There's always something to post. You can retweet, you can do product sneak peeks, you can do sales promotions contests. You can spotlight employees, either new employees that join your firm, or you can brag on employees that have had an anniversary or have just accomplished something big, or maybe they've won a local award. Those are all wonderful things to post. We've talked about customer appreciation and user-generated content, always great ideas. And then there's the holidays, and we've got a lot of them coming up. So if that's right for your business, that's another topic that you can find a way to make relevant for your business posts. Okay, so now the next few slides, and actually the last few that I shared as well, they're all in your handouts. We wanted to make sure we gave you some tangible things that you could mark up as you kind of close out 2020. Our recommendation for you, use the next week or so to figure out whether you're going to have a personal or a business account and get that established. Plan the rest of Q4 of 2020. Think about your themes, think about what days and times are going to be great for you, and don't forget to think about what you're actually going to measure. The next two slides that you've got are really just worksheets for you. So you can put down on paper and just kind of jot down some notes. And then we wanted to also let you know, if you're joining us just for this class, not only is the whole series going to be on YouTube, but we will be offering it again in January. And Christina and I always spend a lot of time before we do a presentation, making sure everything is updated. I guarantee you there's going to be updated information as we close out 2020. So it won't be a complete repeat. In many ways, it'll be a great reinforcement, and then we'll share whatever new we've learned in the last few months of this year. And then again, we encourage you, reach out to us. These are all of our handles and all of our platforms. Send us a little note if you're doing it through LinkedIn so that you know you joined our class. Feel free to go in and like and comment and tell us what your company names are if you haven't already. And we will reach out to you and we'll try to find you on your social media platforms as well and become a follower of your business. Christina, before we wrap up, is there anything you would like to add?
Thank you so much for joining us. It's always fun to talk about the latest information and trends on Instagram and Twitter. There's sometimes Instagram and Twitter are the last channels that you as a business owner, business leader, or marketer will join. So hopefully we've given you some information to decide if one or both are great for your organization. And if so, we look forward to following you on those. Definitely connect with us. I'm at Christina M. Haeger or at OvationsD on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram. We'd love for you to try a story and tag us in a story on Instagram. Try a tweet and tag us. We'll always retweet or reshare that story. And thanks so much for spending some of your time with us. #Wine Wednesday.
Thanks so much, everyone. And thank you, Women's Business Center. You guys have been phenomenal partners. We are grateful for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Aviva and Christina. And thank you all for joining us. As I mentioned, we are recording this session and we'll have it posted on our YouTube channel, hopefully next week. And we'll let you guys all know when that link is available for you to view. And Christina and Aviva, we'll see you in January.